What if I told you the lottery is not won by luck, but by assumption? That the moment you mentally accept yourself as the winner, reality has no choice but to follow. In this video, we are breaking down one of the most misunderstood yet powerful teachings of Neville Goddard, the art of acting as if, not pretending, not hoping, but assuming the state of already being the lottery winner. When you shift your inner identity, the external world rearranges itself to confirm it. Neville Goddard never taught forced action or fake excitement. Acting as if means you occupy the inner state of the fulfilled desire. A lottery winner does not wonder if it will happen. They live from certainty. When you mentally move into that state, you are no longer trying to win. You are remembering that you already have. The law of assumption states that what you assume to be true hardens into fact. When you assume wealth as your identity, the subconscious accepts it as reality. The lottery then becomes a means, not the source. Money flows to match the assumption you persist in. Most people imagine winning from the position of lack. Neville warned against this. Instead, think from the end. Ask yourself, how would I feel waking up tomorrow knowing I've already won? Calm, secure, free. That feeling, not visualization, is the creative act. Lottery winners do not micromanage the universe. Acting as if means releasing the need to control timing, numbers, or outcomes. The subconscious mind orchestrates the bridge of incidents. Your role is to remain faithful to the inner conviction that it is already done. Your self-talk reveals your true assumption. Are you saying, maybe one day, or it's done? Neville emphasized that inner conversations shape destiny. Speak inwardly as someone whose financial worries are finished. Reality will echo that conversation back to you. The world may contradict you at first. Neville called this the interval of time. Do not react. Persistence in the assumption is what collapses time. When you remain loyal to the state of being a winner, the external world must conform, because it always does. Acting as if is not a performance, a personality shift you show to others, or a forced emotional high. Neville Goddard was very precise about this. He taught that creation begins and ends in consciousness, and therefore acting as if is a state of being, not an outward behavior. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not pretending to be a lottery winner. You are entering the identity of one. The outer world only mirrors this inner occupation. Most people misunderstand acting as if and turn it into strained effort. They try to act excited, visualize intensely, or convince themselves through repetition while still feeling uncertainty underneath. Neville warned that this does not work because the subconscious mind does not respond to words or surface actions. It responds to feeling and assumption. If you feel like someone who is still waiting, then waiting is what manifests. If you feel like someone who already knows it is done, then completion must follow. A lottery winner, in consciousness, is not anxious. They are not obsessively checking signs. They are not trying to make things happen. There is a quiet certainty that settles in. Acting as if means you allow that calm assurance to become natural within you. It is the inner knowing that nothing needs to be chased anymore. When Neville spoke of states, he explained that every possible version of you already exists. You do not create wealth. You select the state of the wealthy self. This is why Neville emphasized identity over desire. Wanting implies absence. Being implies possession. The moment you say internally, I am the one who wins, rather than, I hope to win, you have shifted states. That shift is subtle but decisive. Acting as if is the art of remaining faithful to this identity even when the senses deny it. Think of it this way: a person who has already won the lottery does not constantly rehearse the win. They remember it occasionally, but it does not dominate their thoughts. Their nervous system relaxes. Their decisions subtly change. They think in longer timelines. They feel safe. Neville taught that this naturalness is the sign you are truly acting as if. Effort disappears when assumption is correct. The subconscious mind accepts what feels normal. When you gently but persistently return to the feeling of already being financially free, that state becomes your mental home. From there, reality rearranges itself without strain. People, opportunities, impulses, and even chance events align, because they must match the state you occupy. This is what Neville referred to as the bridge of incidents. Events you do not plan consciously, but which inevitably lead to fulfillment. Acting as if also requires emotional discipline. When doubts arise, you do not fight them aggressively. You simply return to the assumption. Neville compared this to sleeping in the wish fulfilled. You rest in it. You let it be. This resting is power. It tells the subconscious that there is no emergency, no lack, no desperation. And the subconscious responds by externalizing that calm assurance as tangible results. The deeper truth Neville revealed is this: reality does not respond to effort, but to identity. The lottery is not something you chase from the outside. It is an echo of who you have decided to be within. When you consistently assume the inner position of a winner, the world has no choice but to confirm it, because consciousness is the only reality. The law of assumption is simple, but it is not shallow. It states that whatever you assume to be true and persist in assuming must express itself as fact. Neville Goddard emphasized that life does not respond to wishes, affirmations, or fleeting thoughts. It responds to assumptions. An assumption is a belief so accepted that it feels natural. When you truly assume yourself to be a lottery winner, you are not asking reality to change. You are declaring what reality already is. Most people live under unconscious assumptions they never question. They assume money is hard to get, that luck is random, that big wins happen to others. These assumptions quietly run their lives. Neville taught that the moment you become aware of an assumption, you gain the power to replace it. Acting as if lottery winning is your reality means you deliberately install a new assumption. I am someone who receives large sums of money easily. Persisting in this inner claim is what activates the law. An assumption becomes law because the subconscious mind does not debate, it obeys. It does not evaluate logic or probability. It simply accepts what you consistently feel to be true. This is why Neville insisted that feeling is the secret. Feeling is not emotion, it is acceptance. When you accept something internally, the subconscious treats it as a command and reorganizes your experience accordingly. This is also why repetition alone does not work unless it produces inner conviction. You can repeat, "I won the lottery," 1,000 times and still assume you are lying to yourself. In that case, the law responds to the deeper assumption of doubt. But when the statement feels ordinary, believable, and even boring, it has crossed into assumption. At that moment, the law is activated. Neville explained that the world you see is delayed evidence of past assumptions. This means your current financial situation is not a verdict. It is a reflection. When you change the assumption now, the reflection must change later. Acting as if is not denial of present facts, it is loyalty to the cause behind them. You are not ignoring reality, you are changing its source. When you assume wealth, you no longer view the lottery as a miracle. It becomes one of many possible channels through which money can arrive. This releases resistance. People who struggle with manifestation often do so because they are emotionally attached to a specific method. Neville warned that attachment implies disbelief. True assumption is relaxed. It knows fulfillment will express itself in the most natural way. Another critical element Neville taught is persistence. Assumptions do not become law through intensity, but through duration. You do not need to feel like a winner every second of the day. You only need to return to the assumption more often than you abandon it. Each return strengthens the state. Over time, the assumption stabilizes and becomes your dominant identity. Once an assumption hardens into belief, behavior follows automatically. You may notice subtle changes: a calmer relationship with money, a sense of expectation without anxiety, intuitive impulses you did not plan. These are not signs you are trying. They are evidence that the law is working through you. The bridge of incidents unfolds naturally, without your conscious interference. Neville's message was radical yet empowering. Nothing external has authority over you. Not odds, not statistics, not past losses. The only law is assumption. When you assume lottery winning as your reality and persist in that assumption, life must reorganize itself to match it. That is not hope, that is law. Most people imagine winning the lottery, but they imagine it incorrectly. Neville Goddard was clear that imagination is not about visual pictures alone, it is about position. When you think of the end, you remain outside of it. You are observing yourself as someone who does not yet have the desire. When you think from the end, you move into the fulfilled state. and experience life as though the wish is already accomplished. This distinction is the difference between manifesting and merely daydreaming. Thinking from the end means you are no longer watching the event happen, you are remembering it. The emotional tone changes immediately. There is no tension, no build-up, no anticipation. Instead, there is relief, a quiet sense of completion. Neville taught that this feeling of relief is the true sign of creation. Desire dissolves because desire has been satisfied in consciousness. When someone thinks from the end of lottery winning, their inner world stabilizes. They do not repeatedly replay the moment of checking numbers with excitement or shock. That scene belongs to someone who has not yet won. The fulfilled self is past that moment. They live in the aftermath. Their concern is no longer, will it happen? But what now? That shift is subtle, but it is everything. Neville often spoke about entering a scene that would naturally occur after fulfillment and feeling it to be real. For a lottery winner, this might be a calm conversation with a loved one about future plans, the ease of paying bills without calculation, or the sensation of financial pressure lifting from the body. These scenes are not dramatic, they are ordinary. Their ordinariness is precisely what gives them power. Thinking from the end also reshapes your inner dialogue. Your self-talk no longer revolves around problems. A person who has already won does not internally rehearse lack. Their mind moves differently. They think in terms of expansion, choice, and time. Neville taught that inner conversations are constantly externalized. When those conversations come from fulfillment, reality must echo them back. A common mistake is trying to maintain excitement. Neville never taught emotional intensity. He taught naturalness. When something is real to you, it does not feel extraordinary all the time. It feels normal. Thinking from the end means allowing the winning state to become mentally boring. That boredom is not failure. It is evidence that the assumption has been accepted. Another crucial aspect is trust in the interval of time. When you think from the end, you stop measuring progress. You are not scanning for signs. You are not emotionally invested in timelines. Neville explained that once the end is accepted, the means are irrelevant. The bridge of incidents unfolds in its own sequence. Your only responsibility is to remain loyal to the state you have entered. Thinking from the end also prevents emotional whiplash. When you imagine from lack, your mood rises and falls with circumstances. When you imagine from fulfillment, circumstances lose their power over you. You may still notice the world, but you are not defined by it. Your center of gravity has shifted inward. Neville's greatest revelation was this: imagination is not fantasy, it is reality in seed form. When you consistently think from the end of being a lottery winner, you are not hoping for a future event. You are occupying a present state, and because consciousness is the only reality, the outer world must eventually conform to the inner position you persist in. Detaching from the how is one of the most difficult yet liberating principles Neville Goddard taught. The human mind is conditioned to believe that control equals safety. It wants to know the exact steps, the timing, the mechanism, and the logic behind every outcome. But Neville was clear: when you attempt to dictate the how, you step out of the state of assumption and return to the state of effort. Acting as if lottery winning is your reality requires surrendering the need to figure it out. The moment you ask, "How will this happen?" you reveal that you are not yet living from the end. A person who has already won the lottery does not analyze the mechanics of the win after the fact. The event is complete. Neville explained that the subconscious mind is infinitely more intelligent than the conscious mind. It sees connections you cannot see and arranges events you could never plan. Your job is not to manage the process, but to remain faithful to the outcome. This is where many people unknowingly block their manifestation. They imagine winning, then immediately follow it with doubt disguised as logic. They calculate odds, compare statistics, or worry about whether they picked the right numbers. Neville would say that this behavior is not neutral, it is an assumption of impossibility, and the law responds accordingly. Detachment from the how does not mean passivity, it means inner trust. You still live your life, make decisions, and take actions when they feel natural. The difference is that your actions are no longer fueled by desperation. They arise from a settled inner knowing. Neville called this inspired action, though he emphasized that even this is secondary. The primary work is always internal. When you truly let go of the how, something shifts emotionally. The body relaxes. The mind becomes quieter. There is less urgency and more presence. This is not indifference, it is confidence. Neville taught that faith is not blind belief, it is loyalty to an unseen reality. Detachment is the emotional signature of that loyalty. The bridge of incidents often unfolds in ways that contradict your expectations. The winning ticket might come through a spontaneous impulse, a delayed decision, a changed routine, or even a forgotten habit. Neville stressed that these events will feel natural when they occur. If you could have predicted them, they would not be bridges of incidents. They would be plans. Trying to control the how also keeps you tied to current circumstances. You judge progress based on what you can see. But Neville warned that appearances are lagging indicators. They are shadows of past assumptions. When you detach from appearances and trust the unseen state, you stop reinforcing the old reality. Another reason detachment is essential is that it removes emotional pressure from the desire. Pressure implies lack. Ease implies possession. When you no longer need to know how, you signal to the subconscious that the outcome is inevitable. And inevitability is the language the subconscious understands. Neville taught that the most powerful assumption is one that feels inevitable rather than exciting. When lottery winning feels like a settled fact, instead of a thrilling possibility, you have released the how. At that point, life reorganizes itself without struggle. You are no longer trying to make something happen. You are allowing what is already assumed to express itself. In Neville's framework, detachment is not giving up. It is giving over. You give the means to the subconscious and remain loyal to the end. That loyalty is what collapses time and allows the unseen to become seen. Your inner conversations are the most honest evidence of what you truly assume to be real. Neville Goddard taught that every word you speak inwardly, every silent argument, every imagined exchange is a creative act. These conversations are not harmless thoughts passing through the mind. They are instructions given to the subconscious. And the subconscious, without question, externalizes them as lived experience. Most people focus on affirmations while ignoring their inner dialogue. They say positive statements during the day, then mentally complain, worry, or argue with life at night. Neville would say the subconscious listens to the dominant conversation, not the occasional positive one. Acting as if lottery winning is your reality requires that your inner speech aligns with the identity of someone whose financial destiny is already secured. A lottery winner does not internally rehearse scarcity. They do not argue with themselves about bills, debts, or missed opportunities. Their inner conversations shift naturally toward ease, choice, and possibility. They may think about how to allocate money, whom to help, where to invest, or how to redesign their life. These are not forced fantasies, they are natural thoughts that arise from the assumption of abundance. Neville emphasized that inner conversations often replay old emotional patterns. People mentally justify their fears, relive disappointments, or prepare for worst-case scenarios. These conversations feel practical, even responsible, but they are creative in the wrong direction. When you repeatedly talk to yourself as someone who is still waiting for a breakthrough, you are assuming waiting as your reality. Changing inner conversations does not require constant policing or suppression. Neville never taught mental violence. Instead, he advised gentle redirection. When you catch yourself speaking inwardly from lack, you do not panic or condemn yourself. You simply return to the conversation that matches fulfillment. You ask, if it were already done, what would I be saying to myself right now? Then you adopt that tone. Tone is critical. Inner conversations are not about specific words, they are about attitude. A calm, settled inner voice carries more creative power than enthusiastic declarations filled with strain. Neville taught that naturalness is the hallmark of a true assumption. When your inner dialogue sounds ordinary, reasonable, and unforced, it has reached the subconscious. Another important insight Neville shared is that inner conversations often happen automatically during idle moments, while showering, walking, or falling asleep. These moments are especially powerful because the conscious mind is relaxed. This is why Neville recommended falling asleep in The Wish Fulfilled. The last inner conversation before sleep plants the seed that grows overnight. As your inner conversations change, you may notice a shift in emotional reactions. Situations that once triggered fear or frustration lose their charge. This is not because circumstances have changed, but because your identity has. You are no longer interpreting life from the position of someone who lacks. You are responding from the position of someone who knows the outcome is favorable. Neville taught that the world is a mirror, not a judge. It reflects inner conversations faithfully, without moral interpretation. When your inner speech aligns with winning, success, and ease, reality must echo it. This is not optimism, it is law. The subconscious accepts inner speech as fact and arranges events accordingly. Ultimately, acting as if lottery winning is your reality means your inner conversations no longer negotiate with doubt. They speak from certainty. They do not ask for permission from circumstances. They assume the end and allow life to catch up. When your inner dialogue matches the fulfilled state consistently, the outer world has no alternative but to confirm it. Persistence is the quiet force that turns assumption into fact. Neville Goddard made it clear that manifestation is not about intensity or emotional highs, but about continuity of state. Many people assume that if they do not feel convinced every moment, they are failing. Neville taught the opposite. Persistence means returning to the assumption again and again, even when the outer world appears unchanged. The physical world operates on delay. What you see today is the result of yesterday's assumptions. When this is understood, impatience dissolves. A person acting as if lottery winning is their reality does not panic when circumstances look the same. They understand that the seed has already been planted. Neville referred to this as living in the interval, the space between assumption and fulfillment, and he emphasized that this interval must be met with loyalty, not reaction. Reaction is what breaks persistence. When someone looks at their bank balance, hears discouraging news, or remembers past losses and emotionally reacts, they momentarily abandon the assumed state. Neville did not say this ruins the manifestation permanently, but it delays it. Each emotional reaction is a return to the old identity. Persistence is simply the decision to return again to the fulfilled state instead of arguing with appearances. Neville explained that persistence does not require effortful concentration. You do not need to fight the mind or suppress thoughts. Persistence is a gentle but firm refusal to identify with lack. When doubts arise, you do not wrestle with them. You let them pass and quietly reoccupy the state of already having won. This repeated return is what stabilizes the assumption. Many people give up because they believe persistence means pretending nonstop. Neville taught that true persistence feels natural, not forced. You are not trying to convince yourself anymore. You are reminding yourself of who you have chosen to be. Just as someone who knows their name does not need constant reminders, the assumed state becomes easier to return to over time. The reason persistence works is because the subconscious mind learns through repetition. Each time you re-enter the feeling of fulfillment, you strengthen the neural and emotional pattern associated with it. Eventually, that pattern becomes dominant. At that point, persistence is no longer required consciously. The state maintains itself. This is when manifestation feels inevitable. Neville warned against interpreting time as failure. Time is neutral. Delay does not mean denial. In fact, persistence during delay is what separates those who manifest from those who do not. The outer world tests your assumption, not to punish you, but to reveal whether the state is truly yours. If you remain unmoved by appearances, you prove ownership of the new identity. Another critical aspect of persistence is emotional neutrality. Neville taught that fulfillment is calm. When you persist correctly, emotional extremes fade. You are not euphoric one day and discouraged the next. You are steady. This steadiness signals to the subconscious that the assumption is settled. Once settled, expression is guaranteed. Persistence also protects you from comparison. When others win, when stories appear online, or when statistics are mentioned, the persistent mind does not feel threatened. It does not interpret others' success as competition. It sees it as confirmation that winning exists as a state, and therefore can be occupied. Neville's final and perhaps most powerful insight was this: you do not persist to make it happen. You persist because it is already true. Persistence is not effort, it is faithfulness. When you remain loyal to the state of being a lottery winner, despite appearances, time collapses, resistance dissolves, and reality aligns. In Neville's words, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist in it. Nothing more is required.